You know when someone comes up to you and says, "Have you tried not being depressed? Have you tried not feeling down?" And then you think, did someone surgically remove the part of this person's brain that gives them any sense at all? Of course, you don't say that to the person, but you feel really awkward and change the subject. But then you can ask a psychologist, is there a way to have more enthusiasm like that? Not just with the power of my mind, but is there something I can do to be a more upbeat person? And the answer is yes. Whether you have depression or not, whether you have bipolar disorder or not, any mental disorder, the tips I'm going to give here are practical things that I do in my daily life. In fact, they increase, double, even triple your enthusiasm because you finally understand why you feel motivated at certain times of the day, less motivated at other times, and how to adjust your mood cycle. You understand all of that in this video. And by the end of the video, I'll tell you about these 5 habits, 5 practices that I use to regulate my mood throughout the day. If you've come this far to the channel seeking a more mature, upbeat, courageous life, where you're a happier and more adult person, you've come to the right place. So let's get started. I know that there are thousands of videos on the internet about feeling down, about depression, and the truth I'm going to tell you as a psychologist is that most of these videos say the same thing, that you should interpret the situations in your life with a more positive outlook, that you should practice gratitude, that you should exercise. Today, I'm going to bring something to you that goes in a different direction, something that I'm sure you probably haven't heard before. But in order for you to understand these 5 habits that I'm going to share with you throughout the video, you have to take a step back and understand where these 5 habits fit in. And they fit into a concept that science calls the circadian rhythm. The cause of most people's lack of enthusiasm, and I mean most people, is a disruption of the circadian rhythm. Here's how it works, very quickly. Within you, every cell and organ in your body operates on a cycle of about 24 hours. What does that mean? It means that each organ in your body, and even each cell in your body, at certain periods within this 24-hour cycle, will be, for example, producing more of a certain type of protein or substance. The organ will be more or less active, the gland may be producing more or less of that type of hormone throughout this 24-hour cycle. Within our body, there is a clock, a master clock, that tells our body more or less when this cycle should occur. But each cell in the organ has its own clock. And what does this have to do with feeling down, with depression? What happens is, everyone has, because of the circadian rhythm, within this 24-hour period, moments when you have more enthusiasm, more energy, when you be in a more alert state, and periods when you be more relaxed, periods when you feel very sleepy and have a strong need to sleep. And usually, people with depression, it's as if they have the circadian rhythm like everyone else, but their rhythm isn't aligned with the outside world. What do I mean by that? It's not that a person with a lack of enthusiasm is always down, but they usually become more upbeat and agitated during a time that's somewhat useless. For example, many people with a lack of enthusiasm drag themselves throughout the morning, and around 6, 7, 8 in the evening or at night, they start to speed up and get excited, right? This prevents them from sleeping properly. It causes them to stay up late at night, sometimes eating junk food and watching nonsense on TV. And what if that time when they are upbeat and agitated was a little earlier? For example, instead of getting all worked up from 6 to 8 p.m., what if you were energized from 6 a.m. until noon or 2 p.m., and then started to feel a bit less enthusiastic, as is normal? What I'm trying to tell you is that you have an internal circadian rhythm, but for it to function properly, it needs to be synchronized with the external cycle of the day, the rising and setting of the sun, the light, the eating patterns. What happens? You have the cycle, and due to some habits, you've probably disturbed it in a way that it's inverted. It's like you're living in a different time zone. I don't know if you've ever traveled to another country or time zone. What happens when, for example, you leave a country at 8 p.m. and go to another one that's 6 a.m. ahead of your home country? And then you have a 6-hour flight. So when you arrive at your destination, it's already noon. but your internal clock is still showing 2 a.m. You're very sleepy. However, the local time in the other country is noon, so people are active, having lunch, and so on. You see that there's a disconnect between the external clock and your internal clock. While everyone else is feeling hungry and lively, you're feeling very sleepy and wanting to sleep. People with lack of enthusiasm and depression often feel as if they are living in a different time zone because they've disrupted the internal cycle in a way that it's not aligned with the external cycle. Got it? And now I'm going to explain these 5 habits, which are 5 ways to align and synchronize your internal cycle with the external cycle. So when it's a time when everyone is working and feeling alert and enthusiastic, for example, in the morning and afternoon, you'll be more upbeat. And when it's time to sleep, when everyone is sleeping, you feel sleepy. When it's time to wake up, when everyone's waking up, you'll be waking up too. That's what we need, especially in these cases, to overcome lack of enthusiasm. Alright, this explanation burned a few neurons for me. If you want, give it a like and subscribe to the channel to show your appreciation, because I definitely burned at least 5 neurons giving this explanation. If the subscribe button is red, it means you still have to click it. Take a look at the subscription button and please subscribe. Now, if you've ruled out that your lack of enthusiasm is due to a medical problem, for example, an untreated illness, anemia, pneumonia, you can do these 5 things that I'm going to write down now to adjust your internal cycle with the external one. And of these 5 habits, the first 3 are related to light, because as science has been indicating in recent years, and this is science of the past 10 to 15 years, the main trigger to synchronize your internal cycle with the external one is light. Exposure to light, especially natural light, sunlight, or even on a cloudy day, daylight, is the main trigger that signals to your brain that it's morning and that it should adjust your cycle to start in the morning. Unfortunately, today we live in a society where we work in closed and dark places. Often, we work in windowless environments with no natural exposure, and most of the time, we work in places with covered ceilings. So you don't see the sky, you don't spend the day outside, you're closed off, usually in a dark place. So the first thing you need to do to adjust your cycle is exposure to natural light in the morning. Natural light, daylight, has a specific frequency of brightness, which is blue light, and it reaches a part of your retina, a tissue located at the back of your eyes. And in the retina, there are cells called melanopsin cells, which are designed to detect blue light and transmit that information to a part of your hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is like the master clock of our body. The master clock in the hypothalamus determines the circadian function, that is, the time of various organs in your body. In the hypothalamus, there are connections to several glands and organs in the body. So here's what happens. Light enters through your eyes, hits the retina, and these melanopsin cells communicate with the hypothalamus in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which then determines the behavior of other organs in your body. So what do? In the morning, to signal to your body that the day is beginning, which is the start of the cycle, you need at least 10 minutes of exposure to natural light. This means that you should open your window or spend some time on your balcony or outside for about 10 minutes. And it's not about getting sunlight on your body and getting a tan. It's about your eyes. It's about being in a well-lit environment with daylight, visually perceiving the daylight with your eyes. Understand? This will trigger various reactions in your body. For example, it decreases melatonin in the morning, which is the hormone that makes you feel sleepy. Increases cortisol, which is the hormone that keeps you alert. Increases adrenaline, which is a hormone that boosts focus and allows you to concentrate on tasks. And increases dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter that motivates you to seek things and pursue tasks. All of this is due to exposure to natural light. The second habit is exposure to bright lights throughout the day. As long as the sun is in the sky, as long as there is brightness, and as long as you're working, there's no problem, and in fact, it's beneficial to have as much light as possible. Ideally, you should work near a large window. In fact, there's scientific evidence showing that people who work in environments with large windows are more productive and more attentive. And if you can't work near a window, turn on as many lights as possible in your house. Usually, the lights we have in our rooms are much dimmer than we imagine. If you turn on the light in your room, but when you open the window, it feels like your eyes need to adjust, it means that the light in your room was too weak. We need lights that are at least as strong as daylight to keep us alert. In other words, strong lights inhibit melatonin, which makes us sleepy, and increase adrenaline. That's the power of having bright lights. So, if you only have one light in your office, if your office is dark, or if the place where you work is dark, the ideal solution is to increase the level of light, open more windows, and have more artificial lights. And now, understanding this, let's move on to the third habit, which is exposure to dim light 2 hours before bed. You see how things work in a cycle because strong lights, especially daylight, make you alert with adrenaline and cortisol and reduce melatonin, the sleep hormone. Now, at night, everything needs to be the opposite. What happens? We expose ourselves to many lights at night, the light from our cell phones, the bright lights in the bathroom and kitchen in our homes, the lights from the television, and all of that does what? It signals to our brains that it's daytime, that it needs to maintain high adrenaline and cortisol levels, and that it shouldn't reduce melatonin. And that's how most people invert their circadian rhythm. They expose themselves to many bright lights at night. So, if you want to correct your cycle, 2 hours before bed, if you want to start with something simpler, 1 hour before bed, minimize all the lights in your house. Preferably, use lamps placed on tables or bedside lamps. Ideally, there shouldn't be strong lights in your line of sight and above, because that's where the melanopsin cells are most concentrated in your visual field. They analyze more from the horizon upwards. So, ideally, your house should be like a cave at night, with very little light, because it's more natural. It's as if you were outside, right? It's more natural for our bodies because we haven't adapted to the invention of electric light for a long time. It's much more natural for our bodies to be in darkness at night. So, my suggestion is to minimize the brightness of all your screens. All televisions have a setting to lower the screen brightness. Dim the lights at night as much as possible, and you see that naturally your melatonin will increase, meaning you will feel more inclined to sleep and have an easier time falling asleep. This is the most significant change of all. If you had to choose just one, I would say darkness at night and as much darkness as possible 2 hours before bed, while still being able to navigate your environment, of course. And in the morning, exposure to sunlight. Those should be the two main ones. Lastly, the last two habits are hyperventilation or physical exercise in the morning. One of the things that helps your body understand that it's the beginning of the cycle is physical activity. It's not exactly that it's the beginning of the cycle, but rather that's the most active part of the cycle to engage in physical activity. So if you can do physical exercise in the morning or early afternoon, it's the best thing you can do because you'll be signaling, in addition to light, another message to your body, which is the signal of physical activity, indicating that it's the active period of the day. And the fifth habit is to stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bed. And when I say stop eating, it's not just that you had dinner at 8:30 p.m., but that you haven't consumed anything else afterwards. Understood? Stop eating means the last thing you put in your mouth that isn't water or medication. What happens is that to sleep well, and sleeping well is what will adjust your circadian rhythm, you need to have your stomach not too full. This is because for sleep, your body needs to be cooler than normal. We lower our body temperature by almost 1 degree Celsius to sleep, but when we eat, the digestion process raises our temperature. So, eating close to bedtime, even if it's just a cookie or a small sandwich, will make it take longer for you to fall asleep. And especially because digestion mobilizes your entire body, there are things that your body cannot do while it's digesting. Your dinner usually takes 2 to 3, sometimes 4 hours to be digested. Now imagine, you ate and then went to sleep. Let's say out of your 8 hours of sleep, you spent 4 hours digesting, leaving only 4 hours for your body to actually repair, rest, and clear the accumulated adenosine in the extracellular space. In other words, you're not really getting a full 8 hours of sleep if you ate right before bed. Now tell me, have you ever heard a psychologist talk to you about these 5 practices? Have you heard this somewhere before? Unfortunately, most psychologists are not familiar with the science of the circadian rhythm and struggle with their patients because they don't address these obvious and direct factors. So, if you want to be seen by a psychologist who understands these things and will help you develop better habits, there's a link to Aureka Therapy in the description. Thank you so much for your attention, for your concentration. And please comment below which of these 5 habits you're going to start today. I want to see the effect of this in your lives. I'm very excited. Goodbye.